Gonna get started. Wow, it actually, this is the fun panel, as you can see. Good morning. My name is Beverly Pittman, and I am your moderator for this morning. I am in my third year as a board member. Very happy to be here and very happy to be a part of the board. And I hope you're going to have some fun with us today. Our topic is walking and health. And interestingly enough, after we do this, we're going to have a series of discussions in here. And there is actually going to be, I'm going to be hosting the discussion on the body. So this should follow from this into that. Let me just start with some introductions. We have two panelists this morning. First, we have Todd Richardson. Todd is a professor of English at the University of Texas Permian Basin, where he teaches and publishes in the area of American Romanticism. He is a life member of the Thoreau Society. His topic is teaching Thoreau's art of walking in the age of AI. Karla, who might use her teacher voice, is a recovering journalist, retired fifth, sixth grade teacher, lifelong Red Sox fan, and is a published romance, steampunk, and fantasy author under a variety of pen names. A member of the Education Committee for the Thoreau Alliance, she hopes to introduce transcendental thought to students long before they are assigned Walden when they get to high school through a series of paranormal fiction set around the Concord area for middle grade readers, as well as engage young students in activities such as how to journal like Henry, quote unquote. Her topic is Confessions of an Accidental Saunterer. We're going to start with Todd. Please welcome our panelists.
Okay, there we go. Can you all hear me? Okay. You have to remember I'm a Yankee originally, right? But I live in Texas, as you can see from the horned lizard there. So I say things like y'all. And I have to remember I have a little bit of reverse culture shock being back here in this part of the country. But anyway, so here we go. Okay, well, we have heard the stories. Rates of anxiety and depression have spiked in recent years, especially among young adults. Experts find a root cause in social isolation brought on by the COVID pandemic and perpetuated by social media and artificial intelligence. In higher education, over-reliance on technology has seriously disrupted students' engagement with each other, literary texts, and their own learning processes. And as Thoreau might recognize, new technology has even further disrupted students' connection to nature, a process begun centuries earlier in the Industrial Revolution. If Thoreau's diagnosis of social and spiritual ills brought about by the cancerous growth of technology is more relevant than ever, then so too must be his solution. Here I detail my approach to teaching Thoreau's walking in an American literature survey. It includes a visit to a nearby nature preserve, hence the horned lizard, featuring a playa ecosystem, where in solitude, students reflect on central thematic elements of walking. Although students sometimes express reluctance to step into the unfamiliar with bobcats and rattlesnakes, they are typically gratified by the deeply restorative effects of nature immersion as promised by Thoreau. So Thoreau works in West Texas also, is what I'm trying to say. An added benefit of teaching Thoreau in this fashion is that students must interpret walking through their own walking experience, something not easily replicated by AI. And so, both through nature immersion and authentic writing, students get a taste of life outside the matrix of technology that I hope will make a difference for them in years to come. So, How exactly is AI and social media bad for students' cognitive and emotional well-being? According to a February survey, just this past February, by College Board, quote, more than 84% of faculty agree that AI reduces students' critical thinking, originality, and deep engagement with course material, end quote. Even before the AI revolution, social media immersion has elicited widespread concern. According to one study, quote, continuous social media utilization among college students leads to distractions, a lack of sleep, and a higher risk of psychological problems like anxiety, depression, and loneliness, end quote, leading to a public health advisory from the US Surgeon General. So acute is the condition that experts have coined the term social media addiction, or SMA. So in a moment of snarkiness, I actually got onto ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT about the effects of using ChatGPT on students' educational and emotional well-being. Its opinion of itself is not very high. And I quote, this is a robot speaking now, okay? When AI generates essays, students may bypass the mental effort that produces learning. Writing an essay is not merely about creating a product. It is a process of organizing ideas, evaluating evidence, and developing reasoning skills. Over-reliance on AI can lead to weaker analytical and problem-solving abilities, reduced writing and communication skills, lower retention of course material, and difficulty applying knowledge to new situations, end quote. Again, that is ChatGPT speaking about ChatGPT. Okay, so when I asked ChatGPT specifically about mental health impact of AI use, ChatGPT was equally discouraging. It responded in part that AI can cause increased anxiety and dependence, imposter syndrome, increased social isolation, and replacement of human emotional support. So what might Thoreau have to say about all this? I believe he can be helpful in two fundamental ways: by providing both a diagnosis and a remedy for the wrongs inherent in our AI-infused educational system. For Thoreau, pure unspoiled thought was a necessary ingredient for living a pure and unspoiled life. In the economy chapter of Walden, he writes, quote, to be a philosopher is to love wisdom, so to love wisdom as to live according to its dictates, a life of simplicity, independence, magnanimity, and trust. It is to solve some of the problems of life, not only theoretically, but practically, end quote. Without the right kind of thought, how can anyone live the right kind of life? What then for Thoreau is preventing the flowering of pure thought? In a word, industrial capitalism. As apologists for this system would argue, division of labor that comes with capitalism leads to more production and more innovation with more efficiency. In Thoreau's day, it led to tremendous advances in communication, transportation, farming, and factory production. Later in economy, however, Thoreau writes, quote, where is this division of labor to end? And what object does it finally serve? No doubt another may also think for me, but it is not therefore desirable that he should do so to the exclusion of my thinking for myself. Almost anticipating AI was coming, right? So enamored are we with the accumulation of wealth through innovation that we are perfectly willing to betray our fundamental calling to, quote, advance confidently in the direction of our dreams, end quote, and, quote, to endeavor to live the life we have imagined, end quote. That is to engage in intentional, purposeful thought. What is the point of newspapers, the telegraph, the new and shiny railroads, if they are not helping us think to greater purpose. As he shows in Walden and Walking, Thoreau was well aware of the deleterious effects of technology on the mental and spiritual health of his neighbors, many years before today's health professionals concerned with AI. In Walking, Thoreau muses that he is, quote, sometimes reminded that the mechanics and shopkeepers stay in their shops not only all the forenoon, but all the afternoon too, sitting with crossed legs, so many of them as if their legs were meant to sit upon and not to stand or walk upon. I think that they deserve credit for not having committed suicide long ago, end quote. More famously still, Thoreau proclaims in Walden that, quote, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation, end quote. What was Thoreau's solution? He tells us plainly in Walking, quote, what I have been preparing to say is that in wildness is the preservation of the world, end quote. He continues, life consists with wildness. The most alive is the wildest. Not yet subdued to man, its presence refreshes him. One who pressed forward would always find himself in a new country of wilderness and surrounded by the raw material of life. Hope and the future for me are in impervious and quaking swamps, end quote. But immersion in nature is not simply immersion in nice scenery, quote. We would fain take that walk, which is perfectly symbolical of the path which we love to travel in the interior and ideal world. The wild then awakens an essential wildness within. With that wildness comes restorative health, power, and life purpose. Nature breaks the maniacal hold that the worst elements of civilization have on our heart, mind, and body. So, there is nothing left for me to do but take students for a walk. Okay, there we go. That's yours truly there, a selfie with a whole group there. But that's in our nature preserve there in West Texas, so a couple group photos there. Okay. In West Texas, where I live and work, most people have little experience with a small amount of parkland we have. So we start with a field trip to a nearby nature preserve that features a playa, a shallow ephemeral lake that supports a vast array of plants, amphibians, birds, and reptiles. There I prepare students for a solitary walk they will undertake in the next week or so. For this part of the assignment, I am indebted to Lynn Holtzman's short article, The Pedagogy of Thoreau's Essay Walking, which appeared in the Thoreau Society Bulletin a few years back. Like Holtzman, I have students stop at several stations in the park, reading segments of Walking that highlight central themes of the essay, then write a reflection based on both their reading and their personal encounter with a natural space. So the first station, this is called the Butterfly Garden. So most of these students, by the way, most of the photos and what I'm going to read is going to be the students themselves. I want to give them room and their voice here to kind of come out. So these are photos from the Butterfly Garden. Okay, oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. At the first station, the Butterfly Garden, students reflect on Thoreau's method for meditative walking. Students, by the way, okay, I already said that, yeah. What comes out again and again in their writings is a sense of peace, tranquility, and even healing they experience. And how unfamiliar those feelings are in their frenetic lives, and how much Thoreau's writing validates their experience. One student wrote, quote, I'm not thinking a million things at once, as I usually do. I'm absorbed in the moment. A cool breeze flows around me. Two curve-billed thrashers land atop the fence behind me. All the animals I observe seem to have no care, and it seems that the longer I watch them, the more I become free. Thoreau describes walking as an art because it is more than just taking a stroll. He wants us to learn how to lose ourselves in nature. Walking in the way Thoreau once would free our mind and allow us to reconnect with ourselves. This is necessary and beneficial to not becoming mindless citizens of society, end quote. Another student wrote, to me, the butterflies mimicked spirits of past travelers and settlers that had found refuge at this location. Their presence represents the purity and divinity that encapsulates the garden. I found myself smiling as I watched the wind brush against the sunflowers as the sun was beaming onto my forehead. I had never felt so relaxed, at peace, and in tune with my soul, end quote. The Hawk Tower, so this is the second station. So this is the playa, the ephemeral lake. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The Hawk Tower. Okay. Yeah, so the Hawk Tower, it's a structure that rises about 20 feet above the playa. Here I ask students to consider what Thoreau means by wildness. How can messy swampland, as Thoreau describes in the essay, and as they see all around them, going to benefit them and civilization as a whole? In the words of one student, when, quote, Thoreau claims wildness can preserve the world, he means not only the wilderness of nature, but the wildness of the human spirit. Being surrounded by, quote, the raw material of life, end quote, evokes hope and substance, preserving them and the world, end quote. Another student concurred, noting she, quote, felt calmer here than anywhere else, that freedom from disturbance is what needs to be valued more in this time of technology, end quote. So affecting was this time of peace in nature that it helped one student recover precious childhood memories lost from traumatic brain injury. He writes, quote, Thoreau's belief was that wildness was a place to reconnect with your instincts as well as feel liberated from the social combines. When we went on the path with the trees that towered over, providing shade, it helped me remember things I couldn't remember due to concussions. On the Hawk Tower, I felt a sense of sadness and happiness as well. The sadness came because I knew how much my little cousin would have enjoyed this trip that made me feel like he was there with me the whole time, end quote. The third station is the boardwalk. Okay, here's the boardwalk. Okay, boardwalk. Here, students reflect on Thoreau's advocacy for the gospel of this moment. True walkers immersed in the wild fully, quote, live in the present, end quote. What are the dangers of not living in the present? One student observed, quote, we are constantly looking for upgrades to make life easier. However, we don't acknowledge whatever is offered to us right now. All the advancements created by man have destroyed humanity. Thoreau wants people to break out of that cycle so they can discover themselves and their purposes. What are we if we do live in the present? One student observed, quote, I caught a glimpse of a small bird who perched itself on a branch, tilting his head to the right as it noticed my presence, then flew away. I felt welcomed by nature, as if he nodded at me and let me stay and enjoy his home. I felt part of the environment and one with the sounds, the sights, and the souls that resided there. I was living in the present moment, end quote. Okay, in the interest of time, I'll have to skip over this next section. So, okay, yeah. So I'll just quote a portion from what this one student's saying. Being alone on this boardwalk somehow made me feel closer to people I had lost. I watched as plants rustled slightly with the breeze, touching my face as it had plenty of times throughout my walk. I felt as though I was meant to be there at that very moment, end quote. So there you have it. It's not hard to imagine that what Thoreau would have to say about social media and AI. Innovations that usurp the act of thinking itself. But as I hope I've demonstrated, Thoreau's solution is every bit effective today as it was in his own time. Get people into nature, free them, get them mobile, give them time to discover nature's beautiful sights, sounds, and smells. Then what they discover within will be even more remarkable. A wealth of peace, well-being, and even life purpose. And who knows, maybe even a philosopher. I'll let a student have the final word. Boy, did this project make me somewhat of a Thoreau fangirl. I now realize that it is essential for me to make it into nature as much as possible. Before I went to the preserve, I felt utterly trapped. Living in Odessa, an oil town my entire life, I have done nothing but try to make a swift escape from here. I knew incredibly little about the preserve. I never knew it would be so charming, so welcoming, refreshing. Despite its surroundings, it thrives. Despite my surroundings, I too can thrive. Thank you.
That's okay. John has a couple copies of my presentation if somebody needs to read along. Oops. So this is me. Confessions of an Accidental Saunterer, or It's Not Easy Being Green. Let me start with a bit of my background. Am I pointing this way? Oh, that way. Okay. So who am I? I am a recovering journalist. I wrote an opinion column for the Metro West Daily News division of the Daily News. I translated larger political issues into local level understanding. I describe myself as a slightly acerbic social critic, or as Arlo Guthrie, one of my transcendental heroes, used to say, and creating a nuisance. And he said that before his acceptance on the Group W bench. I say that because that's what my column did. And unfortunately, a column I wrote about Bob Reich when he ran for governor caught the attention of Bill Dedman of the Boston Globe, who led him to dub me an influential media figure. This set forth a series of really intense dominoes that ended with me being interviewed by Fox News about conflicts of interest between politicians and reporters. Like Arlo on the Group W bench, it opened my eyes to a new reality of how the system really works. In my case, that was Boston journalism. Like Arlo, I made a lot of noise before I walked out the door. Until 2024, I was a school teacher. I worked in a looped 5th, 6th grade classroom, working with mostly gifted and talented kids, you know, the ones who are going to change the world but can't tie their shoes. Currently, I am a member of the Thoreau Alliance Education Committee. I am a published fiction author. I have written over a dozen romance novels under one grandmother's name for a pen name, a steampunk collection under a different pen name, and some fantasy under yet another grandmother's name, as well as about half a dozen short stories in various anthologies under my name. And I have a thing for tiaras. As you can see, I have room for more if you're looking for the perfect gift for me. I also have another tiara stand, so I do have room for a half dozen more. So I started sauntering in my youth. This started with walking along the shoreline from Minot Light and Cohasset down to Scituate Light and back again. I also used to play the "It's Only a Couple Stops" game in Boston when it came to the T. I would be in downtown Crossing. It's only a couple stops, so I can just walk up to Arlington. It's only a couple stops, so I can walk up to Mass Ave. And then I'm just over the bridge. I just walk up to Harvard Square. rather than get into a metal tube underground in the middle of the summer with sweaty people when the T didn't have air conditioning. It still doesn't have air conditioning, by the way. So I'm also a bit of a klutz. I have discovered this. I tripped over the finish line of my first 5K race, not once, but twice. I've run multiple 5K, 10K, and after many slip trips and to use the medical term FDGBs, fall down, go boom, I needed ankle surgery to fix what my orthopedist had dubbed my glass ankle. And in typical Karla format, a cast is just a blank canvas. The surgery was successful, but it did end my running career. But sometimes I succeeded. Like the time I came in dead last but finished in the Runner's World back-to-back 5K and 10K races off the heights on Heartbreak Hill by Boston College. It was a 90-degree day. I ran both races. I could have walked home at one point. I chose to finish the race. The other one is I did finish the BAA distance medley, which was a 5K in April, a 10K in June, which was also 90 degrees, and a half marathon in October where it was pouring rain. So it's not easy being green. Why am I evoking Kermit the Frog in relation to sauntering and Thoreau? Kermit's a hero of mine. He's also a transcendental hero of mine. He blends in despite being born to stand out, much like Thoreau and all the other weird kids out there. You know the weird kids. They're the kids who people tend to go, oh, them. You know Henry, the guy who like walks through the woods instead of cutting it down and burnt down half a Concord? Oh, him. Yeah, let's just say I'm in that category. You know Karla, the girl who will wax poetic about how Eddie Pursuit changed how the position of shortstop was played in Major League Baseball, despite being a no-name utility infielder for his entire career, and watches Doctor Who? Oh, her. So you see, growing up, I enjoyed things that weren't girl things. Girl things at that time were quiet. They were obedient. They were all sugar and spice and everything nice. But not me. You know, back in the days when women didn't play professional baseball or tackle football or professional hockey like they do now. And they certainly didn't have ADHD. When I was in my 40s, one of my sons was diagnosed with ADHD. His therapist said, well, as somebody with ADHD, and I stopped her. I don't have ADHD. And she did that funny tilt of the head. And she studied me and she looked at the medical intake form and she said, but your father and your brothers and your nephews and most of your male first cousins all have ADHD. What makes you think? And I was like, because I'm a girl. Girls don't have ADHD. Then came the slow blink, the face palm, and the let's get you tested. Turns out I have ADHD. Who knew? It's not that easy being green. So let's just say, as an adult, I totally get why Martha Hunt walked into the Concord River shortly after Thoreau moved to Walden. She was citing the unfairness of gender roles in society and how she couldn't move to Walden if she wanted to. And if the truth had been told, had I been alive back then, I probably would have followed her into the river. Fortunately, I was born now, and I'm still here. But this also meant over the years, I taught myself a lot of necessary skills for self-regulation, which is how I actually became an accidental saunterer. I knew walking was good for my overall mental and physical health because along with all the executive function issues I have, I also have borderline high blood pressure, functional depression, and anxiety. When I was walking along the shoreline in Scituate as a teen, I wasn't frustrated about being the weird kid. I was listening to the waves lap on the shore. I was listening to the songs of the seabirds and smelled the salt air. I knew that there was something to this whole walking thing I had read in high school. And note, I'm going to try to keep my attention, such as it is, on the essay walking, even though the theme of being present while you're walking is throughout all of Thoreau's nature essays. So he opens walking with words that have always resonated with me. I have met with but one or two persons in the course of my life who understood the art of walking, that is, taking walks, who had a genius, so to speak, for sauntering. These days, the big talk in healthcare is the art of touching grass or connecting daily with nature. The most recognizable and studied form of this is called forest bathing. And again, I will I apologize in advance for any mispronunciation in Japanese because I'm not a Japanese speaker, but Shinrin-yoku. Shinrin-yoku is a term that originated with Tomohide Akiyama, the former director of the Japanese Ministry of Agriculture, Forest, and Fisheries in the 1980s. There had been a series of studies that showed spending time in nature was an effective therapy method. Who knew? Trees and plants release compounds and oils that were beneficial for human health. In 2020, a paper came out called The Effects of Shinrin-yoku Forest Bathing in Nature Therapy on Mental Health, a systemic review and meta-analysis for the International Journal of Mental Health and Addiction. The authors noted, while need for more rigorous research and extensive follow-up assessments, the findings indicate that Shinrin-yoku can be effective in reducing mental health symptoms in the short term, particularly anxiety. The thrust of the paper is that in modern times, our physical health is improving, but our mental health is declining. The conclusion, practicing Shinrin-yoku reduced negative mental health symptoms in a manner that could be measured. Oh, wait, Thoreau did. There is in fact a sort of harmony discovered between the capabilities of the landscape within a circle of 10 miles radius or the limits of an afternoon walk. Which brings me to some of the physical things. In walking, Thoreau points out nowadays almost all man's improvements, so-called, as the building of houses and cutting down the forest and of large trees, simply deform the landscape and make it more and more tame and cheap. He continues on throughout about how those attracted to nature over society are considered lower than animals. This is the industrial age. It's dawning. Thoreau was reminding us that those who valued nature over industry were seen as anomalies. Imagine wanting to walk without purpose rather than hack down trees. Oh, him. So for centuries, embracing that urban and industrial lifestyle became the societal norm. But now, medical experts are pushing the idea that to be part of nature is critical to our well-being and survival. Several papers now analyze things like how walking lowered blood pressure, specifically a piece called Blood Pressure Lowering Effects of Shinrin-yoku. In particular, the forest environments have larger effects on lowering SBP in people with high blood pressure in middle-aged and older people compared to the non-forest environment. But how long does it take to lower your blood pressure? Do we need to walk all day like Thoreau did? I mean, as much as I'd like to do that, Henry, I got a life. You know? So some of the less formal publications out there from big institutions, such as the Stanford Lifestyle Medication publication, points out that 2 hours of forest bathing a week has been introduced in urban environments. It showed reduced stress, lowered blood pressure, and boosted increased immune cell activity. The author then adds this little tidbit. It doesn't matter whether the 120 minutes represents one long trip or several shorter visits to nature, so long as we can get outside for 20 minutes every day and enhance our well-being. I repeat, there is in fact a sort of harmony discoverable between the capabilities of the landscape within a circle of 10 miles radius or the limit of an afternoon walk. The list of publications from institutions like the Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins, Harvard School of Public Health, and so many others throughout the world all say the same thing. Walking in the woods is good for the mind, the body, and the soul. The thought of involving all 5 senses through thoughtful engagement, mostly walking in nature without electronics, lowered blood pressure, strengthens the immune system, and reduces anxiety, among other positive effects. The thought of multiple scientific papers discussing how integrating sauntering into our lives balances mental, spiritual, and physical health seems to miss the point that Thoreau said it early, and he said it best. The essay Walking is more than what my college professors would have said, a reflection of philosophical treatise on personal freedom and the importance of nature. Yeah, they said stuff like that. It is an instruction manual. It's an instruction manual for practicing forest bathing or Shinrin-yoku. It's about being present in the moment. It's about deeper understanding of oneself and one's world. I like sauntering Being green means a lot of things. Like Kermit the Frog, it's about blending in while standing out at the same time, which is difficult. Thoreau was in that category. Kermit's famous thoughts on self-acceptance speak to, them, people like me, the ones who didn't fit into neat little boxes, being written off because it's not easy. The song has a very pointed reminder at the end. But green's the color of spring, and green can be cool and friendly like, and green can be big like an ocean, important like a mountain, or tall like a tree. When green is all there is to be, it could make you wonder why. But why wonder, why wonder? I'm green, it's fine, it's beautiful, and I think it's what I'd like to be. So now that we are learning scientifically from the experts what Thoreau was stating all along, we need to be in touch with nature, even if it's just outside your front door. So go touch the grass. You have eaten hay long enough. The spring has come with its green. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd and Karla. We have a little time for Q&A, and Court is going to be our Vanna White to speak of. Court's going to be our mic runner. Court.
I'll be sauntering with the mic. Shall we open it up a bit? Yes, thank you.
Our son has a Muscovy duck that he raised as a duckling for the past 4 years, and this duck was like his love. He followed him like a dog across the whole yard and followed him everywhere. And on Tuesday, the duck Pennywise suddenly died. And my son was totally devastated. I mean, very emotional. So yesterday he texted me and he said, "Mom, I'm going out into the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. I'm going for a walk. I need to process this, get rid of my emotion." And so he went, and then late in the evening, he sent me a photograph. He found a heart-shaped leaf on the ground, and that made him feel a lot better. He said, "I loved my duck. I know I gave it a good life, and I feel much better." So going out to nature for David has always been like a place of renewal.
I love how you, Todd, and I'm sure Karla too, have engaged your students and encouraged them to really better understand Thoreau's walking by going out, into the marshland, into the butterfly garden, and reflecting and writing. Now, in addition to the writing, here's my question is, I'm curious, in addition, you've got to have the writing, but in addition to the writing, do you see any merit in having these young students record their experience? And because I know TikTok is so big, is there merit in that? Thoreau probably would hate it, seeing nature through the lens of a smartphone, but to engage high school students and undergrads, do you see merit in these videos and posting them?
I can say as an elementary school teacher, I was that cusp between elementary and middle school. So I was getting kids as they were kind of forming who they were before they know everything. So it was really great to introduce, people would say, oh, well, interesting, Thoreau to fifth graders. That's a little much, don't you think? No, it wasn't. I was grateful because my school was on 3 acres of wetland. So I could take them outside and I was teaching them to observe. And the result that I saw were kids who came into my room with parents, and they have very motivated parents who are like, STEM, you got to do STEM, but they don't understand what STEM is. And by taking them out, it helped them. And it actually helped direct them. So like when they're going into high school and college, their focus wasn't, I need to make money doing STEM. It was more like, I have a curiosity. And that's what's important. How they record that, there was times when they told you you had no imagination if you were reading. Every time television was going to rot our brains, and yet then PBS comes along. Computers were going to be these horrible things. We have all these predictions that come along. And I think that if you teach people the use of technology, whether it's AI, whether it's a computer, whether it's TikTok, whatever, it's a tool. A hammer is a tool. It's a great tool, unless you need to take a screw out of a cabinet. Then you will destroy the cabinet. You have to learn to use the tools properly. So that, and for me, I was catching kids young enough that I was teaching them, this is a tool, use it properly. And that makes a difference.
For my part, as I mentioned that a lot of the photographs were from students themselves. So I encouraged them to take pictures and sketch. Some wrote poetry as a way of sort of expressing themselves creatively in that fashion. I had never thought about having them do a TikTok. I'm certainly willing to try. Yeah. Thank you.
I wonder if you could speak a little bit to how we might be experiencing a pendulum moving toward increased advanced technology, but there might be a counterforce that is coming from students, not only from you.
Honestly, from where I teach, I mean, I keep thinking of that old Simpsons episode where they have the rich Texan and they ask him about the environment. They say, the environment, we killed ours decades ago. So, but in all seriousness, I mean, so many of the students, they've literally never been in nature before, where I work and teach and all that. I have, so I'm just speaking from my limited space here where I work. I have not seen students where I work taking much of their own initiative to do this kind of work. Frankly, it's kind of come from a lot of my own initiative. So I would certainly love to see that sort of a groundswelling from, the 18 to 25-year-old bracket. We ourselves want to go off the grid. Sometimes I'll mention in class something about cottagecore and people, getting back into DIY projects. And for a lot of them, their eyes will kind of light up. But honestly, I haven't seen a lot of that where I work and teach. I hope it's the case that folks are doing that in other regions.
My retirement gig is I sell fancy notebooks in Harvard's backyard. And what I see a lot of over the past couple of years that I've been there is I have kids coming in saying, my handwriting's really horrible. I want to write more. I want to journal more. I'm reading all these kids are coming from like Harvard and MIT and BU and Northeastern and other schools in the area, and they're recognizing they need to physically write more, number one, which is huge. Because that was a battle I used to fight with my principal all the time. I used to buy my students a fountain pen and teach them to decipher ancient texts because cursive is boring. And there are kids in college now with fountain pens and who decipher ancient texts. But there are YouTube videos now on how to write cursive because schools stopped teaching cursive and kids want to learn. I can't tell you how many students come in and ask me how to use a planner, a physical planner, not a calendar, not an e-thing, because they're using what they call dumb phones. So they're not like the computer phones, they're just a regular old flip phone type thing. That's a big thing now. And using paper planners because they're finding it helps them remember better. So I think that, yes, there is always going to be that this is how we use things. But I also see like kind of this youth movement driving it back to, but now we need to take a step back and a breath. And that, and also the big thing too, is there was a thing on the news recently about how corporate offices were complaining about Gen Z calling out to touch grass. Like kids who would call in sick for, using their paid time off to actually go out for a walk in nature or spend a day outside. So I think it's happening. I think it's happening slowly but surely. And maybe it is just the pendulum swinging back and we'll hopefully settle. We're in a good spot.
Thank you, Karla. Thank you, Todd. Thank you.